Hello, in this video I'll be expanding on some of the ideas from a video I posted a few weeks ago. The main idea this time around is to create a two-voice polyphonic, not paraphonic, hybrid patch with performable real-time control using the Moog Matriarch and Midi. I'll be using Logic again for this patch, but this is possible with any modern DAW, either with factory or third-party plugins, routing. I've just fallen in love with Logic's Midi functionality again after a few years of dabbling in Live in Studio One. Anyway, you'll need a Midi to CV converter, or you can use Ableton's CV control plugin, or like I'm going to do today, use Expert Sleeper's Silent Way. This patch is of course possible with hardware and modules as well, and I'll be doing a video about that in the near future. Anyway, there's an index in the description if you want to skip around, but before I get patching, here's a little demo of some of the things I came up with messing around with these ideas. Okay, I'm going into global settings, going to load the defaults, and after that, I'll go back into global settings and turn off local keyboard control. We need to do this to avoid MIDI feedback loops if we use the Matriarch as a MIDI controller. So nothing should happen if we hit any keys. Great. Okay, so now I'm going to create a software instrument track and go over here to MIDI effects. There's a whole bunch of them, as you can see. And we'll go with the Arpeggiator for now. Okay, going to go over to the keyboard tab here and click on keyboard split. This is the range that the Arpeggiator will work. The range that's not selected will be MIDI through, and that bottom little section is for key switches, which we'll talk about later. Now simply going to load up an external instrument, so we'll find the Matriarch. Actually, you know what? Let's go with the Tetra this time first. The Tetra is a super underrated 4-voice little polysynth. All right, key split works. A polysynth obviously has individual envelopes, filters, and VCAs for each voice, so when you're using an arpeggiator, you can hear the notes ring through even when the next one is triggered. Okay, sounds great. Let's try this out on the Matriarch. So just duplicate the track for now, rename it, and send it to the Matriarch. All set. Okay, so I'm just going to set up a quick duophonic patch. Not going to try to duplicate the Tetra sound, but might as well go for that nice 80s synth pop sound. Go for some octaves and some detuning. Pulse wave. Yeah, there we go. That sounds good. Okay, let's thicken it up with a bit of delay. Nice. Okay, let's try out this Arpeggiator. Key split is set at C3, so this is all MIDI through, and there's our Arpeggiator. Great, it works. Okay, you can hear that the envelope is not being re-triggered. It is with the Arpeggiator, but as soon as I hold a note down, the envelope is not re-triggered. So we can hit the multi-trigger. There we go. All right, sounds a bit bright, so I'm just going to make some adjustments. Obviously, using multi-trigger, we're never going to get a sustained note in the bass. But it still sounds pretty good. Okay, you can see that when I'm in duo mode, sometimes the voices will alternate when I don't want them to. There's doing it again, because we're not really doing anything about the voice allocation at the moment. Even though this is temperamental, it's still worth exploring because it's not possible on the Matriarch to have a repeated bass note like this while the Arpeggiator is running. Okay, I found a workaround that makes this a little easier to perform. Just engage the hold button, roll your hand as you play the chords. Much better. All right, we need to work on voice allocation if we want to get a truly polyphonic Matriarch. Unfortunately, the Matriarch is not capable of allocating voices itself, so we'll use Midi to help us out this time. There's a ton of MIDI to CV modules available on the market. I've used a few and really like Mutable Yarns, Expert Sleeper's Disting, Polyend works great. There's really a ton out there. But for this video, I'm going to use Expert Sleeper's Silent Way plugin for voice allocation. Silent Way is actually capable of full polyphony up to 16 voices, if you can believe it. So the method I'm showing you here is not entirely necessary, but I like the idea of having things key split. All right, let's get some sounds up and set up a simple duophonic patch. Okay, that'll work. Everything past the mixer and the signal chain on the Matriarch is stereo. 2 filters, 2 envelope generators, 2 VCAs, 2 channels of delay. So we've got all we need to make 2 polyphonic voices. So let's get patching. So we're going to split the mixer. So first I'm taking a cable of the mixer out, putting into VCF1 channel in, and turning off oscillators 3 and 4. And going to grab another patch and out of the wave out of oscillator 3 into a molt, and same thing with oscillator 4. And from the molt we'll go into the input on this attenuator here. So this will act as the volume control. And out of the attenuator we're going to go into VCF2 in. Okay, make sure your filter's in stereo mode. Now we're going to set up the gates. Going from my Midi converter, in this case it's my Expert Sleeper's ES3 interface, sending gate signal out to the trigger inputs of both of the envelope generators. And we'll use molt cables to go out of the envelope into the CV input on the VCA. And we'll take the other end of the molt and patch that into the input on an attenuator. The attenuator is going to be used to control the filter envelope modulation. And so out of the attenuator into the cutoff, CV cutoff in for filter 1. And we'll duplicate the exact same thing with the other envelope and filter. There we go. Okay, to control the pitch, we're going to go out of the Midi converter, once again in this case silent way, into pitch input of oscillator 1 and pitch input of oscillator 3 respectively. Make sure that we've got our VCA set to drone mode. Turn off multi-trigger, we don't need that. Making sure that the envelope amount on the filter is at 0. Okay, now we've got to set up our voice allocation, so we're going to use Midi to do this. So create software, 2 software instruments. Going to name them Matriarch Voice 1 and Matriarch Voice 2. And we'll open up the inspector over here and change our key limit on Voice 1 from C-2 to B2, and Voice 2 will go C3 to G8. So the key split is pretty much the same as we did with just the Arpeggiator a second ago. Okay, so we can control both of these with one MIDI controller, in this case the Matriarch. We're just going to select them both and create a stack. It's got to be a summing stack for this to work. Just going to rename it Matriarch Master. Now we've got to set up our MIDI to CV converters. As mentioned, I'm going to use Silent Way this time, so I'll show you how to set that up. Silent Way uses audio to CV conversion, so I need to set my instrument outputs to the channels of my interface, which I patched the pitch and gate cables into a second ago. Now I go to the Instrument tab and select Silent Way Voice Controller, and there it is. Might as well show you how to calibrate this. So I'm going to take a direct out of the oscillator into the sidechain input on my Silent Way plugin and just hit calibrate. It makes a bunch of crazy weird sounds, but once it's done, it will key track pretty much any oscillator, which is super cool. Okay, I'll just clear the side chain and do the same thing with the second channel here. If you're using a standard MIDI to CV converter, you'd normally send MIDI to your module and then patch out of the module into your synth. Instead of running calibration, I'm just going to load a calibration file I saved before, which is convenient, and that's it. We're set up. So let's try it out. There's our key split. Cool, we've got a 2-voice with 2 oscillators per voice, polyphonic Matriarch with a key split voice allocation. Super cool. So take a second and dial up some sounds. I think I'll go with a plucky top end and a more sustained bass. There we go. All right, let's add some delay. Cool. I'm not crazy about the delay on the bass, so I'm going to take a dead patch and patch it into channel 1 input of the delay. So now we've got delay in the upper voices and none in the bottom. Great. Okay, bass should be lower, so I'm going to go into the inspector and just transpose it right there. Perfect. Oh, make sure that your stack is selected. There we go. Add some pulse width modulation. And that's it. Awesome. Now, if we wanted to use this as just a normal polyphonic keyboard, we can put this, transpose it up the octave. Keep the key split for voice allocation, set the voices to similar settings, and voila, real-time polyphony. Remember, if you're using Silent Way, there's easier ways to get polyphony, but you need to do it like this if you're using two Midi to CV converters. Okay, let's get our patch back to where it was. Cool. Okay, let's set up an arpeggiator on the second voice so that we can get the same sort of sound we got earlier with the tetra. Great, that sounds cool, but let's go into Logic again and go into Settings, Midi Sync Project Settings. We're going to select the Matriarch here and the clock out. Now we can sync our delay to the project. Turn on a click. Hit the sync button. And we can scroll through different divisions. There, dotted quarters. Let's go with that. Okay, we don't need the click anymore. The Matriarch's Arpeggiator is really cool. It's perfect for simple, quick arpeggios on the fly, but it's not even close to as powerful as a software arpeggiator. So let's take a closer look at what we can do with this thing. One of my favorite things is the different latch modes. Right now I've got it set to transpose. So as you see, I play in an arpeggiator and then I can transpose it with one key move. Sweet. It's really perfect for a guy like me that's not really a keyboard player. Nice, you get the idea. A lot of fun. Okay, what's next? How about the different play modes? Can use the different variations. And of course, different octaves. Another benefit, of course, is that it leaves one hand free to play with things like pulse width. Great, that's a lot of fun. Let's go back into Logic and change up our settings for the key split. So I'm going to change this one, the voice 1 to C1 to F2, and voice 2 I'll go F sharp to G8. So we've got a lower key split now. And I'm going to go into the Arpeggiator, to the keyboard tab of voice 2, hit the key split button, and now we're going to set up some key switches. So we're going to expand that so we get all of the parameters that are available now, and bring back down our Arpeggiator. If we click on the little magnifying glass remote button here, we get a close-up of our key switches. So let's put them into practice. So the idea now is we have live control over a bunch of the Arpeggiator parameters, like latch, for instance. One thing that's really too bad is there's no one key reset. You have to push play and then stop. Oh well, still pretty cool. So we've got control over direction of play. I like that one. The hand is order that you played it, and this one's random. Yeah, but I like this one. There's the octaves, even cooler. So with some practice, you can come up with some pretty good on-the-fly pattern changes. I like 2 octaves better. That's cool. I think I like 2 the best. Leave it there. I like that one. But I think my favorites are up and down. Let's see if I can come up with something with those 2 alternating. All right, this setup is really super versatile. It's really like you've got 2 separate synths. So I'm going to set up a step sequencer on voice 1. I did a video about this a while ago. You can check that out if you want. I'm just going to load up a template for now. Templates are available to download if you want from my website, robemusic.com. And just as a reminder, with this setup, you could use any of Logic's MIDI effects or third-party MIDI effects to control either of the voices. Which reminds me, Scripter, let's bring that up. Scripter is a MIDI effects plugin that uses JavaScript. So if you can program in JavaScript, you can pretty much create anything you want. Let's take a look at it. So key range, for instance. So this is a factory one. We could have used key range instead of the inspector to split our keyboard. So to find the key split, I always just play a note on the keyboard and move it around until I find it. 63 is supposed to be C3, but depending on the octave you're in the matriarch, that might change. Okay, just bear with me as I get this sequencer set up here. Just going to lower the gate so it triggers the envelope. And maybe make some adjustments in the envelope itself. Sounds pretty good. All right, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, using a hybrid setup like this really expands the capabilities of the Matriarch. There's so many great MIDI effects plugins included with Logic and other DAWs, of course, as well as some absolutely fantastic third-party plugins out there. Using key splits to separate the voices makes it easy to perform live and create tons of really cool sounding and performable patches that would not otherwise be possible with the Matriarch. So now that everything's set up, I'm just going to mess around. Thanks for watching. Hope this gives you some ideas.